Good evening, everyone. I, Advocate Richa Sharma, moderator for today's session, on behalf of Youth Bar Association of India, welcomes you on the fourth day of Virtual National Summer School 2020 on mediation. Today, we all are here to educate ourselves from Mr. J.M. Sharma ji, our senior advocate mediator of Supreme Court, along with Mr. Sanpreet Tajmani ji, President Youth Bar Association of India. Mr. J.M. Sharma sir is a senior advocate in Supreme Court and is in practice for more than 28 years. He did his course in mediation from Singapore Mediation Arbitration Center in 2007 and from Harvard Law School in 2008. Since 2009, he is a mediator in Supreme Court Center and conducting private and public court annex mediations. We feel really honored, sir, today to have such an eminent personality with us to share his views and experiences. Now, I would like to invite, sir, to Mr. J.M. Sharma, sir, to proceed with the topic. Sir, please.
Thank you, Richa. uh, Sanpreet Ajmani, Richa Sharma, advocate, and an academician, and dear all students. Good afternoon to all of you. By this time, you have had two or three sessions of mediation and lectures. By the time you are having a little idea of what mediation is all about. The day before, yesterday, there was a lecture giving you the concept of disputes, what is a dispute, how disputes arise, and how the dispute resolution mechanism evolved. While the prevalent is dispute resolution mechanism is adjudicatory system, and mediation is not adjudicatory system, but it's a participative system. It's a system where the parties participate in arriving at a solution or a dispute resolution. While in an adjudicatory system, which is prevalent nowadays, whether it is an arbitration or it is through court, there the court adjudicates the stand of A, whether A is right or B is right, or vice versa, whatever it is. So now, after understanding the concept of mediation, now we must go what the mediation is all about and how it moves around. Because for court, you must have come across how the courts function. There is an appearance in court and how the mediator functions. For a mediation, mediations are twofold. Mediation, which is nowadays most prevalent till now, is the court annexed mediation in India. We are just concentrating at present in the conditions in India. Though in westward there is a pre-litigation also. But I'm assuming I'm coming at a stage where the mediation process has started. Whether it is a pre-litigation mediation or it's a court annexed mediation, the court has appointed a mediator. The parties, whether it's a pre-litigation, the parties have appointed a mediator. And after appointment of mediator, what are the stages and how it moves on? That's what today's topic is all about. Broadly speaking, after mediator has been appointed and parties are there, they can be divided into 4 stages. 4 stages specifically. One is the introduction, where the mediator introduces and tells about the object and all this. The B is a joint session, broadly. If anybody wants to write down, they can write down also. Broadly speaking, because that will be comfortable for them also. First is introductory. B is joint session. I'll elaborate it subsequently. C is separate session, or we call it caucus, or a private session, whatever the word may be. And the fourth is closing. Now I begin with the introduction. For mediation, the first and foremost requirement is that it has to be a formal. It can't be informal. Though the procedure is informal, the process is informal, but you can't have it in your living in an office. It must be in an office. The mediator arrives it, and the mediator sitting is equally important. Because in a mediation, sitting appears to be a normal thing, but it's very important. Because both parties must have a feeling that they are equally based and equal at an equal platform with the mediator, where mediator can interact with them. So it should be a formal place. It should not be at a living room or so. It should be at an office or a center, but it should be a formal place. And sitting place should be in such a manner where both parties, including their lawyers, must have an equal placing. They should not be in a place where the mediator has got more concentration with A party and less with B, or more with B, less with A. Now, after sitting is there, and he is able to contact with them. One more thing, mediator should not be in an authoritative position. He should be in a controlling position, but not authoritative. So he should not be at a raised platform like a court or any other thing. He should be along with them. After mediation starts, this is a sitting arrangement, then the mediator first of all gives his introduction. And in introduction, he must introduce himself, that what is all about. Because mediation till now, you must have concentrated, you must have seen that it's a party-centric. And parties who have volunteered at present to resolve their disputes through mediator. So therefore, the mediator must first of all gives about his credentials. Thereafter, he must tell the first thing about his neutrality. Neutrality, he must emphasize that he is a neutral person, and he must display also. The popular phrase that is that the justice much should not be done, it should appear also to be done. So he should make every effort, and it should appear also that he is a neutral person. He should not give any party a chance that he is biased or he is a different. Second, at the same time, he must disclose any possibility of bias or his connection with the party. Say like there could be a situation where the mediator knows about the lawyer of one party. Just apart from lawyer, a little more connection than that. So he must disclose at the very outset, after introduction about his neutrality, he must disclose, sir, this mediator, this lawyer, he has been briefing me. So do you have any objection? I'm pretty sure that the other party would say, no problem, sir, no problem. We have got no problem. We believe in your neutrality. But suppose this fact comes to know subsequently during the process that this fact has not been disclosed, then it will be considered to be a bad. More so ever, disclosure is important. Though under mediation, there is still not a statutory requirement, just like in Arbitration and Conciliation Act, where Section 10 requires for an arbitrator to disclose any apprehensions. So that disclosure is not there, but the professional ethics require for a mediator that he must disclose any apprehension of bias. because that will have an effect on his neutrality. So the mediator must disclose any apprehension of bias and then move on. The next thing which he must give in about his introduction is that he must disclose that the proceedings are confidential. Their confidentiality aspect must be disclosed, that mediator telling parties that whatever happens in this room is for the consumption of this room only. It cannot be disclosed elsewhere, because the introduction is one of the most important aspect which gives confidence of the parties and the lawyers in the mediation process. The mediator must introduce the concept of mediation also and advantages also. The advantages means that they can resolve their dispute if resolved it for all times to come, and they are party centric. Mediator must disclose also that since the process is party centric, so therefore at any time the parties feel that this mediation is not working for them, they can always say thank you. The mediator would only report failed. It would not say anything more than this. So whatever happened there is for the purposes of mediation only. These introductions are very important for a mediator to build in confidence with the parties. Must explain the process. Because introduction, if it is effective, then things move around like anything. And they move in a right and a positive direction. After introduction, then the mediator talks about the joint session. It is at the same place. The joint session is because mediator do not get a docket or a paper or a file just like in a courtroom. A mediator only gets, if it's a pre-litigation mediation, then only an agreement that he has been appointed as a mediator. And if it is by court, then the letter and the court order that so-and-so is being appointed as a mediator and he has to report on so-and-so day. So the joint purpose of joint session is that he must have an idea and he must know the facts that what is the dispute is all about. So when he is holding a joint session, he must tell both the parties that, sir, there could be, he must space out the rules of mediation. In a mediation process, since parties, they are at differences against each other. And the differences at times could be emotional. And if it is emotional, that emotional outburst could be really bad during the mediation process. See, like if there is a matrimonial dispute. In a matrimonial dispute between wife and husband, most of the things are very emotional. And at times, there may be a husband who is aggrieved or maybe a wife who is aggrieved because of XYZ reasons, the disputes arose. So therefore, the mediator must disclose the rules of mediation, that A, the language must be parliamentary because he is an anchor. He is an anchor. Unlike the present TV anchors where the participants speak and they even fight it. So he has not to allow the parties to fight against each other. Because the other day I was in TV, I was watching, somebody was showing that the two participants, they belonging to warring group, different groups, and they started throwing abuses against each other and hurling abuses and may become a little physical also. So mediator has to control and tell each and every party strictly. That's very important. And thereafter, the parties can start it pleasantly. How he starts it, the more he pleasantly performs this introductory session, the more confidence building is there. at this time only, one more important thing he has to take care of is that he must deal with the advocates. There is a one school of thought which believes, which thinks that the advocates, those who are normally advocates, are being considered to be litigating, they're in litigation. So therefore, they will be opposed for settlement. I personally believe that I don't believe, don't subscribe to this viewpoint. I believe every lawyer believes that the matter should come to an end, provided his fees part, his requirements of his financial aspect is being taken care of. If that aspect is made sure, then I'm pretty sure that all lawyers would support any settlement which is being arrived. So make sure at the introduction about the lawyers, say that the lawyers, since it's a party centric, the concentration would be, interaction would be more with the parties, not with the lawyers. But at the same time, the lawyers must be kept in good humor. The lawyer must be said, sir, please don't wait so much of time here. But at the same time, keep in loop. Keep connected with your party. And anytime your party requires any help or any understanding, then please explain to the party whatever the thing is, because the lawyer has got much more and better understanding than a party. And one more thing, if you keep a lawyer in good humor, a subsequent stage it arises. At times, parties arrive at a loggerhead, a stalemate. They say, no, I want A perspective, it's a B perspective, and then we call it a stalemate. This is a very complex situation for a mediator. It is a dead situation. The lawyers are of great help. So therefore, lawyers must be put in good humor. So they should also be made participant, make sure that tell the parties that their financial requirements should be taken care of. This will keep them in a good humor. Now, after when the joint session starts, allow anybody, any party to introduce what the facts are about. And the facts should be by asking open-ended questions. The question should be, tell me about this. Tell me more about how it comes about. Say like if there is a commercial dispute. So how you were appointed, one must be principal, other is agent. How your relationship is started, what are you manufacturing, what is this, to make atmosphere lighter and understand, arrive at a situation where the dispute, try to understand the dispute. Give equal opportunity to other party. Both parties must be given an equal opportunity. So they should not feel that they are little isolated. The object of joint session is to understand the dispute between the parties. Because it is only in joint session where both parties will be able to understand each other's point of view when listened for the first time. There could be a situation where after a very long time, say like in a matrimonial case, there could be a situation where parties are meeting after a year or 2 or 3 or whatever it is. So, and be a good observant also. As a mediator, has to be a good observant. And it is at that time you are able to understand what exactly is the problem and where the problem arises. Now, it is at this stage when you understood, when a mediator understands the situation and the factual situation, and he fully in knowledge of what the situation is, then he can shift to a separate session. Now, this is the third stage. Now, separate session has a great importance in the sense that you are interacting with one party. The second party is not with you. It is at that time you elicited more information from the party. Ask for his offer, how to resolve it. The more elaborately you ask, you can ask specifically what is his offer. And it is at this time the mediator must emphasize his neutrality and his confidentiality. Confidentiality of these proceedings. The mediator always tells the parties that these proceedings, whatever happens, will be for the purposes of this room only. And whatever offer will you give will not be conveyed to the other party unless you accept. Now, since it's a separate session, the experience shows that the party gives more elaborate answers. Since it's a one-to-one talk, the party opens up a little more, gives better options how to resolve the crisis, and at this stage, the mediator possibly understands the interest of the party. One interest is not what one is speaking. The underlying interest of the party, what it is. Now, separate session with A party, possibly you will be able to understand what A party is saying. Then A goes out. Then have a session with B party. That's a separate session. Now, whatever happened with A, the mediator do not disclose it to the B. And once again, do the same exercise what it had done with the A. And get more information that gets his viewpoint and possibly his underlying interest and his offer for solutions, solving the problem. At times, things could be wonderful. If your mediator is fortunate, possibly the parties one-to-one may not be saying such things, but before a mediator in a separate session, they would be disclosing what they really want. There could be more than one separate sessions. Possibly you want to elucidate more information. The mediator can have more than one separate session. Now, when there is a separate sessions are going on, there could be a situation which most of the mediators are scared of, and they are very scary of such situation, which is a fox pass or an impasse. Parties are taking a strict stand. No, I want this, say like in a landlord-tenant dispute, the landlord said, I want this much increase only, 100. And only for 5 years, not beyond that. The tenant is saying, no, I can't increase. What to do? Fail. What we would call it fox pass. Impasse. Now in an impasse can be resolved by doing few techniques which mediator always do. One is the reality check. While in a separate session, the mediator with the one party do some reality checking. Reality checking is in the sense telling him what exactly his objective is. The proposal which he has given is, okay, I want this, test it in reality, okay, whether it is an achievable or it is not achievable, and how far it is achievable. And if it is achievable, it is after 10 years. Possibly, you will not be able to do it. So the reality checking is one of the methods to break the impasse. One other could be, another option could be, as I told you, the lawyers could be of great help. The lawyers, the mediator can always hold a sub-session. We call it sub-session. One is the joint session, separate session, and a sub-session. A sub-session could be, because lawyers are much more rational than a party. Because party are charged with emotions as well as the facts. The lawyers are not charged with emotion. The mediator at times sit with the lawyers and interact with them, and with them interacting and possibly try to break the impasse or give some suggestion And it is at that time, think some out of box. Something could be out of box. I recollect it could be anything. I recollect in one of my experiences, the parties had come to a fox pass. They were not very far from settlement. It was a matrimonial dispute. The alimony had the dispute with regard to alimony, but all other issues were settled. I said, from my point of view, they have failed. You both have failed. So I must return back to the papers. But we have come so far. I'm giving you 2 more days. And next opportunity. If you want to come, come. Otherwise, I'll send the papers back and you fight in the court. This trick worked. I call it trick, but it's not a foolproof trick that every time it worked. After 2 days, they came up. They said, yes, sir, you are right. Because if it failed, there is a great loss and we won't be able to do it. So therefore, they settled it. Both of them came down, came down. So you have to find an innovative thing as a mediator, find different ways to break the fox pass. Think out of box. Give more allurement of different type, which is not possible. And it is at that's why I say it is at that stage the mediator's skills are required and his experience will. Now, after this separate session, now it comes the fourth stage is closing. Closing could be 2 forms. A form, the parties arrive at a settlement. When a parties arrive at a settlement, it has to be in writing, because this is very important. So the terms the parties have agreed upon, first of all, call them the parties. The parties sit and you tell them A, B, C, D, E, these are the terms. When it's okay, then the mediator drafts that settlement. Remember, the terms should not be illegal. Terms should not be in such a form, because these terms would go to the judge. The judge should not carry an impression that there's some illegal terms have been added in it, though thinking out of box, and in that out of box, some illegal things have been done. So please, that should not be incorporated. As a mediator, those should not be there. But the terms should be clear, unambiguous. After the terms are clear, the parties sign. After parties sign, their lawyers are also, they all sign. At times there could be a witness. You can always have a witness. In the terms, it should be specifically mentioned, say like in a matrimonial case, say like it must incorporate whether the status of the parties, whether they are living together or it will be divorce. B, what will be the alimony. C, the child, if there is custody. The documents, say like some exchange of other jewelry, other documents or property, they all should be mentioned in the, and after that signing, that should go to the judge, parties sign, and thank parties. Thank all, mediator must thank all parties for their cooperation, because it is because of their efforts only. Mediator is only a facilitator, because they parties wanted to settle, therefore the settlement has arrived at. Suppose there is another situation. The other situation is that the parties are unable to settle. So it is at that stage the mediator only writes the mediation failed. Mediator do not write that the mediation failed because the A party was very rigid, or B party was reluctant to agree, or he was different ways, or he wanted to extract more money, or nothing of that sort should be there. The only thing which I have learned by way of an experience is, in place of just writing mediation failed, I believe that mediation never fails. Mediation failed at this stage, because with experience I have seen that the parties are not agreeable to arrive at a settlement at this stage. They are not mature enough, or they are not understanding the realistic situation. But the seeds of settlement has already been sown. Maybe after some time, the parties would realize that no, that settlement was very good. So always keep an option open. So always write. I personally write it myself. I write it myself. Mediation failed at this stage. No, nothing of this sort. A party was bad or so. And once again, thank parties. Tell parties you are at this stage, may not be arrive at a settlement, but maybe in future you arrive at a settlement. I have experiences. I don't want to elucidate individual experiences, but with experience, I am saying it. Okay, at that stage, after some time, the parties again come and they say, okay, we want to arrive at a settlement, and the settlement arises. So this is the process of mediation which takes place. Till today, there is no statutory provisions. Unlike arbitration, which is an informal but an adjudicated process, sometimes some mediator, because of convenience sake, offer in writing of parties. But that offer should be kept in confidentiality, because that offer should not be disclosed to other party unless the one party agrees to show it to other. So in writing, mediator must take it. I have also taken in certain cases in mediation offers to resolve the dispute. So this is the process of mediation. Thank you, Richa. Now, any questions or which want to ask?
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to, sir, invite Mr. Rakesh Khanna, sir. He's a senior advocate and former president Supreme Court from Bar Association. Sir, would you like to?
See, I am today only as a guest.
Hello, Rakesh.
And I am in the learning process today. I am in the class amongst these students. So I am not to address anything. I am here to learn.
Most welcome, sir. Most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Rakesh.
Thank you, sir, for the nice discourse.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to start the interaction round for the students who wants to ask the questions. My first question to be asked by Maris Port.
Rahul, please unmute him.
He has the access, he can unmute himself and ask the question.
Hello.
Okay, Richa, you may ask.
Hello.
Yeah, Maris Port. Yes.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Sir, actually, I have two questions. First question, especially as a mediator, are you in favor of conducting caucus? This is one. Second, how that online mediation supposed to be? Is there any changes required or some additional preparation is required, or how it is supposed to be? Okay. And third one, is there any difference between pre-litigation mediation and court-referred mediation? Either it could be under Section 89 of CPC or some other Family Courts Act reference.
What was your second question?
So second question related to online mediation.
Online, okay.
Yeah, is there any separate preparation is required?
Sir, I'm sorry I'm intervening in between, but
Yes,
before you answer to his query, I just quickly request all the participants to briefly introduce yourself, that they are advocate from where, and after that our worthy speaker will respond to your query.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Actually, sir, this is Maris Port, Dr. Maris Port, working as an assistant professor of law at Gujarat National Law University.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Maris Port, I'm pronouncing it Maris Port.
Yes, sir.
Maris Port. First, I respond to your caucus question regarding caucus. Now, in a mediation, as I told you in the very beginning, till now you have heard about the concept of also.
Yes, sir.
In mediation, confidentiality and neutrality is the most important aspect.
Yes.
Now, in a separate session, in a joint session, parties may not be opening up that much
Yeah.
in the presence of other party.
Okay.
So when there is a separate session, it is a separate session where the mediator speaks to a party and say, okay, yes, sir, now tell me what all you want to speak. Open your heart. And when a party opens his heart, then whatever he has, it is at that time the mediator has to build up the confidentiality aspect, saying it that whatever you will say, that will remain confidential. It will not be disclosed to other party. It is only then the party would speak up more about what the problem is, why the more facts, and it will elucidate more facts. So, and caucus only gives a mediator an opportunity to have an insight why the problem is and what is his real interest, what is the interest of the party. So caucus is the most important situation in the process of mediation. So caucus cannot be avoided, and no mediator can say that caucus is not important or it's cannot be used into it. Even I put it this way: though in India a community mediation is still not prevalent, except which we recently heard in two aspects which have been experimented. One was a litigation of Ayodhya dispute. That was a community dispute, and where the mediators worked it. They were not dealing with one individual or two individuals. They were dealing with different individuals, 10, 25 units of individuals. So they were dealing with differently and having the separate sessions. They were not sitting jointly in a room. And the second was that Shaheen Bagh. If you recently heard that in January, February, there was protesters who had blocked the road, and the matter came up before Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court appointed a committee of mediators to interact with them. So they didn't dealt with a separate session. They dealt it openly because the protesters said we don't want to have a separate session, be it in the community only. And possibly speaking, because since the art of the interest could not be made out, mediation failed. So the caucus is one of the most important. I personally feel that it is where the things could be worked out. Now your second question is with regard to online question. Look, online process is going on now. Virtual hearing is the in thing, because practically you cannot move around. However, in online session, few aspects are to be taken care of. One of the aspects with regard to confidentiality is very important. Very important. And confidentiality, caucus, I'm responding to your query, caucus vis-a-vis online. Now in an online, suppose I'm in an online session with you, with a party. How do I know that he is not recording, he is not using it otherwise, or B is not listening or otherwise? So these problems may arise, which we are seeing at present, because this is recently being started, and we have been sharing with other mediators also, those who have been conducting it. So few of the suggestions came up. Even one of the suggestions came up from Rakesh sir also. Since he is there, so I can mention his name also. Suggestion came up. We said that there should be an undertaking by each party at the beginning when there is an online session, that this meeting shall not be recorded. A. B. Nobody else is there while hearing it. I will not use it elsewhere. Because once meeting is recorded, because in a mediation, physical mediation, we always say that this will not be used elsewhere. The offer which you give here cannot be called in court. Suppose A offers a party that I am ready to give X amount, while at the end of the day mediation fails. Now the B party cannot say before the court, okay, you are ready to give X amount, or X proposal you are ready to give me that, or vice versa. In online, to make sure that this do not happen, because the proceedings cannot be called in court, they cannot be used in evidence. So therefore, undertaking could be one of the options that known party will be using. In the last session, which came up, one more came from one of the speakers, that while an online session, it could be through centers. Say like technically, today everything is being coordinated by Rahul. Now, Rahul knows all things and he understands everything. So why not this all technological proposition should be done through a center, maybe by Supreme Court center or a High Court center or any other thing. And the mediator also has to take precaution that he must deal party one by one. When there is a separate session, he must deal it individually with one party and put B party absolutely off. It should not be together. And we say, I'll be dealing with B party after some time. So these are some of the precautions which a mediator must take. Now your third is difference of pre-litigation and court-annexed mediation. Up till now, in India, it is always a court-annexed mediation. Because section 89 CPC says, whenever there is a court judge finds that there is a possibility of arrangement, that possibility of settlement between the parties, he may refer to any of the alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, including arbitration, mediation, conciliation, and lok adalat, whatever it is. So, statutory only court-annexed mediations are in prevalence. However, a new step has been taken under the Commercial Codes Act. Under the Commercial Codes Act, it says that before court taking up the matter, a mediation should be resorted before taking up the matter. That's also a step in between pre-litigation and court taking up the cognizance of the dispute. Now, pre-litigation is something where the parties are at a difference and they apprehend that there is a possibility of dispute. Just like in arbitration, a dispute arises. And before going to arbitration, they say that please, we are ready to resolve this dispute. But this is called exactly a pre-litigation. Now, pre-litigation is twofold. A could be by a parties file an agreement. Some centers, Supreme Court Mediation Center has not yet started, but Delhi Center has started. Some Bangalore Center has started pre-litigation mediation. Chennai is being doing like this pre-litigation mediation, where the parties they go to them, they say, okay, we are having this dispute. Please mediate it. The mediators, the center takes some amount as a fees, and thereafter agreement is being signed by both the parties, and the mediator makes an attempt to resolve the dispute. The second thing which I must share with you is the mediation arbitration. In a lot of cases where there is an arbitration agreement, where there is a dispute resolution mechanism is arbitration, not going to court. Some companies, recently, not recently, in West it was very much prevalent, but in India also it is coming up very popularly, that they incorporate a clause mediation arbitration. Meaning thereby, if a dispute arises, before going to arbitration, they will resolve first into mediation. And if mediation resolves into settlement, wonderful. If it doesn't, then they'll go to arbitration. That's an adjudicatory process. So this is about the pre-litigation aspects.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing the experience. Next question is from Prithvi.
Good afternoon, sir.
Prithvi.
Sir, this is Prithvi R. Hegde, first year law student from KLE Society's Law College. My question is, you said there are like the rules of mediation says that the parties should not be violent or abusive, but sometimes we cannot predict, and some parties tend to be violent and they have a history of physically assaulting someone. And in such cases, will mediator be provided with any protection?
Prithvi, your apprehensions are right. Sometimes you, as a mediator, you come across parties who are nurturing very wild emotions against the other party, and at times they become little aggressive also. It is at this stage only the skills of mediators are required. Mediator must handle the situation in such a manner that the parties should not reach to that stage. They are already boiling. There is no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. That they are boiling and their emotions are boiling and they are ready to burst out. The mediator must give them a soothing balm and handle it in this manner. This is what the skill, why this mediation process will succeed. Once it is able to resolve it, then definitely things will cool down. And as far as the protection is concerned, fortunately till now, I have not come across where some police or that physical has to come across, but parties have become aggressive. That I have come across. They are becoming a little aggressive and they raise their voice, they stand up, and since they are sitting, so make while sitting, keep them a little away so that they may not physically assault each other. That's what the thing is. Yes, Prithvi. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So you already explained in the joint sessions that time.
Yes.
And the second part, then the second question arrives from Humdan.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for a very informative session. I'm Mohammad Hamdan from Brunei, actually. I'm a LLM graduate practicing as an educator. So I have two questions for you. One is, have you come across a situation where one party has their own lawyer and another party does not have one during the mediation process? In such situation, as a mediator, do you advise the party without a lawyer to get one for representing them or supporting them in the mediation process? That's number one. Number two, upon agreeing to a settlement agreement at the end of the process of mediation, is it possible for one of the party to allege bias or dissatisfaction over the mediation process and refuse to uphold the agreement? Thank you, sir.
Mohammed, you have asked very pertinent question and very important. Because the mediation process indicates that the mediator has to balance the equality between the parties. Both parties must be equally empowered. At times, the mediator is skilled to empower a weaker party. At times, there could be a situation where the one party is more skilled, oratorial skill is better, ability to explain things are better. The other party is shy, quiet, feeling weak, unable to explain things, social handicap. So it is at that stage, the mediator must empower the other party so that the both party must feel that they are in the same platform. Because bringing both parties at the same platform would be make them easier to resolve a thing. If any of the party feels that A is better or B is better or I am inferior or B is better, then the settlement would never arrive. Now, in this bringing the parties at an equal status, one of the situations which you have rightly mentioned it, there could be a situation where A is having a lawyer and B is not having a lawyer. Or there could be a situation where A is having a better lawyers, more skilled lawyers, and B's lawyers is not so good. Now, suppose I'll respond to the first query where there is a one lawyer, A is a lawyer, B is do not have a lawyer. That's your query basically. So in that case, as a mediator, what we should do, first of all, ask the B, do you have any advocate? If you do not have any advocate, if you are an advocate, please bring him. If you do not have any advocate, if you want, can be always supplied by a legal services authority. If you cannot afford an advocate. If you cannot afford an advocate, then legal services can always be provided. That's the second situation. C situation, suppose she says, no, I don't want lawyer. I'm fair enough, I can compete. I can talk and interact. It is at that situation. As a mediator, mediator must ask, then do you have any objection with the presence of lawyer? Or do you want that lawyer should not be there? That should be in the joint session, in both the parties. Suppose he or she objects that I have got objection, or if she says I have got no objection, whatever it is. So these doubts should be cleared at the very onset in the joint session. Because both parties must feel empowered. No party should feel that other party is less powered or is more powered. They should be at an equal plane. So this is the way things would be handled as far as the first query is concerned. B question, as far as the bias is concerned. Look, once a settlement has been arrived, as I told you in the beginning of this, the mid session also, when the mediator is disclosing, introducing himself, he must disclose all possibility of apprehension of bias. That apprehension of bias, A situation could be he knows about it. B situation is during the process he comes to know about that possibility of apprehension of bias. It is immediately the mediator's ethics required that he must disclose immediately at that stage. It is at that stage only. C situation. Even then parties allow it to continue and a settlement is arrived at. Then possibility, since the settlement goes for going for a decree, settlement is only arrived at. Its settlement, legal situation of this settlement is just like a settlement under Order 23, Rule 3 CPC. Hamadan, you are from Brunei.
Yes, sir. I'm from Brunei. Actually, I'm from India, but practicing in Brunei as an adjudicator.
Okay. Hamadan, settlement arrived at between the parties is a sort of a settlement which is arrived at under the Civil Procedure Code, where there is a compromise between the parties. So it is a settlement. A settlement goes to the court before it is being approved. Now the settlement is approved by the court, and it is at that time any party feels any grievance, he can refer it to the court. And then it's a matter between court and the party. Normally, the apprehension of bias or the bias until unless very specific or a fraud has been committed or like that, that can be dealt with in there only. There is a provision in CPC, Civil Procedure Code. There's an Order 23, Rule 3. 3A says that whenever there is somebody challenges that settlement, it has to be dealt with by that court only. So since it's a court annexed mediation, so court annexed mediation, it is before that court only. You will challenge because the reason for fraud, reason for bias, and or any other reason why this agreement should not be there. But it will be a very uphill task, very, very uphill task. But since you asked for the provisions, so I have mentioned it, but once a settlement has been arrived at, uphill task, but the mediator must disclose at each and every stage there is any possibility of any apprehension.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next question is of Nena Verma.
Good evening, sir. I'm Nana Verma. I'm a second year BLLB student. My question was, do decisions under mediation comes under the RTI ambit?
Do
the decisions under the mediation comes under the RTI ambit?
Look, first of all, mediation do not take any decision. Mediation is different from adjudicatory process. In an adjudication, the court decides. Court says, yes, A is right, B is wrong, or B is right, A is wrong. Mediation is not adjudication. Mediation is a process where the mediator facilitates the parties to arrive at a settlement. This is a party-centric. So he only facilitates. He cannot even say, okay, possibly this is the best solution or you must do it. Cannot impose it. So either the party arrives at a settlement. Once the parties arrive at a settlement, then the settlement is referred to the court, and court approves that settlement, and that forms part of decree or part of order. And once it is part of order, then it's in the public domain. Then the settlement is in public domain because court decree is a public under the public domain. So anybody can, if it is required, court can ask document can be can be taken. If the mediation fails, then the mediator only gives the report that mediation failed. I only personally, with my experience, said that the mediation failed at this stage. But the guidelines, what the Supreme Court has given, Supreme Court Mediation Committee has given, is only mediation failed. But I, with my experience, said that mediation failed at this stage. Now, only this much is written. Nothing can be written that it failed because of A party or a B party or it happened to this stage or that stage. No details. So only if you ask what goes to the court, since it's the matter between the parties, nothing goes for the court, so nothing for arising for RTI. So you cannot ask for the document if it fails. You cannot ask for that. Please tell me what had happened in mediation proceedings. Not even under the law, cannot even call mediator as a witness. Okay, sir, the mediation parties took place and here it happened that way. Suppose I give you a situation, a mediation failed, and after some time there is a criminal offense. And in a criminal offense, one of the party takes a defense that in mediation, this and this happened. And just because of this, in order to prove that, he cannot even call mediator. So mediator will say, nothing can be disclosed. So that's a situation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Naina.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dibagya. Hello.
Pragya Mitra.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, sir. Thank you for today's session. I have a question. Like the process of mediation involves the understanding of various subtle elements like the body language of the parties, their vocal intonation, and even other gestures. So how successful
Dibagya, your voice dropped.
Are you there?
Richa, you may read the question.
Okay. He wants to ask, mediation involves a lot of study of the parties' latent interest through body language and vocal innovations. Can online mediation be equally successful as physical mediation?
Look, as far as you are absolutely right, physical communication is better than virtual communication. At times it has got its own advantages. Physical has got its own advantages. Physical has got its own advantages because there you are able to see, interact. But in the absence of physical interaction, therefore virtual is being done. You cannot dispense with. Okay, you cannot. Possibly we may get used to it. This type of virtual sessions also. And you have rightly asked, as a mediator, the body language, seeing the parties, they are all helpful. These are all, even in a lawyer also, in a litigation lawyer, you always see how the judge reacts, what the judge is responding to a query, or in a cross-examination, when you cross-examine a person, how the other parties feel, person who is being cross-examined. These are all helpful tips. So definitely they've got their own role, their importance. I'm not undermining, I'm not comparing it that this is as good as so, but in the circumstances you have to do the best.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Very true, sir. And next question goes to Shubhangi. Shubhangi. Are you there?
Shubhangi.
So, the mic is not working. You may ask. Her mic is not working.
Okay. Is a mediation settlement enforceable just like a court order?
Yes. That's the question.
Yes.
Oh, as I told you, when a settlement is arrived at, the settlement after signing between the parties, it goes to the court. When it goes to the court approves it, and court passes an order saying the case is disposed of in terms of the settlement, and that settlement becomes part of the decree. So it approves, it gets an approval of the court. Now it's a court order. So court has approved it. So it is as executable as any other thing. Court decree.
So the next question is from Nikunj.
Good evening, sir. I'm Nikunj Jain, fourth year student of Subharti Institute of Law.
Yes, Nikunj.
Sir, I want to ask if the mediation is court-referred mediation. In that mediation, one party do not participate in the process of mediation. Even after the court order, will that party be liable for punishment if he or she does not respect court order?
Okay. Look, Nikunj, mediation is party-centric.
Yes, sir.
It's a party who has to play a main role. It's not the adjudicatory where court orders A and decides whether you are right or wrong. That's a process, and if party agrees to it, well and good. If party says, no, sorry, sir, I don't want to participate in mediation, then he will not be liable for punishment. Please, the court never punishes. If he is not agreeable for mediation, then the court will adjudicate it. And in practice, the court never gets upset over the fact that mediation has not been followed and has not been fruitful. It's always an attempt. That's by way of practice, judges are also becoming used to it, that they refer it, possibly if can be settled. If they are not settled, the judges don't get bias. They adjudicate the matter on the basis of evidence. There could be a situation that the party who has refused to join, the court may decide in his favor, the evidence is in his favor. So, therefore, it has nothing to do. I hope, Nikunj, that response gets your... Nikunj?
Nikunj,
Yes.
are you there? Okay. Next question from Shail Bala Tripathi, sir.
Good evening, sir. This is Shail Bala Tripathi, fifth year law student from Department of Law, Calcutta University. Sir, my question is, like, mediation is a party-centric process. What should be an ideal timeline under which a mediation process should come to an end or should be settled? Like any specified timing where the mediator should close the settlement between the parties or something, sir?
Right. Shell, I'm very happy that you are very enthusiastic students. You are one of the few students. You are asking again another next time also a question. In the first session also you put up a question. It was a good question, and you rightly said, in a mediation, it should be time bound, and it is time bound. And normally we give 6 weeks. Court also gives 6 weeks. 6 weeks means within the 6 weeks, you get about 3 to 4 sessions. Within 3 to 4 sessions, things become clearer. If mediator takes a call that in an exceptional case, a little more time is required, because at times parties are away, they are residing at very different places, they are not able to meet every other day, just like suppose the parties are in Delhi only, I can ask them to come on Sunday also, then come on next Friday also, and Tuesday. Within a 2-3 weeks, I can have a 2-3 meeting. Suppose the one party is abroad or unable to come, or like any other things. So in certain cases, time can be extended, but definitely it should be 6 weeks, which we normally call it in a mediation arbitration. When there is a medi-arb, the agreement is mediation arbitration. The mediation always takes place for 6 weeks only. After 6 weeks, if mediation is not arrived at a settlement, then they go for an adjudicatory process, arbitration. So 6 weeks is normally a reasonable time, which court considers appropriate. In Supreme Court also, normally court gives time 6 weeks, and after 6 weeks, we have to give an interim report. If we want to extend the period, we can always say, this is the reason. Please, I'm hopeful. Please give us more time. Or we can always say, give us 3 weeks or 2 weeks, which normally court under circumstances gives. But right, there must be a fixed time. It should not go in, because one party should not take advantage of delay in the proceedings.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next question is from Deepa Seni.
Seni.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello.
Hello, Deepika.
Yes.
Deepa Seni.
Yes, Deepa, you are audible.
I am a law graduate from IPS College, Roorkee, which I am a student. Sir, my question is, if there are any exceptional circumstances provided, then this confidential communication can be disclosed?
Oh. Yes, Deepa. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Look, confidentiality is the heart and soul of neutrality, is soul of mediation. Heart, you cannot compromise. You give heart to somebody and still the man is not surviving. So confidentiality cannot be compromised unless the only exception is where the parties agree. See, like there could be a situation where a party gives an offer.
Yes.
And according to the rules of confidentiality, mediator should not disclose it to the B party. However, the only exception is we can seek permission. The A party says, okay, you can offer it to B. Let us see what they have to say. The exception is only this much with the consent of parties. But otherwise, confidentiality is the heart and soul of mediation. It cannot be compromised and should not be compromised.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes, Deepa.
Richard, take last question.
Thank you, Deepa. Next question is from Deepika.
Good evening, sir. I'm Deepika, third year law student. Sir, my question is, in a case where a mediator commits fraud or become biased towards one party, would there be any criminal liability of a mediator in that case?
Look, if a mediator, though the professional ethics rules, since the mediation is not even statutorily having a statute approval till now, but certain areas, mediation, professional ethics is a basic requirement. That's the first aspect. When there is a deviation from any of the principles, then there is a professionally unethical. And since the mediation process is on the basis of confidence and faith in the mediator, a word is spread amongst the mediators that the so-and-so mediator is not good, he discloses information or he does any other thing, the minor things. I'm talking about minor things. And so gradually he will lose the things. And possibly, suppose he is registered with some organization, like with Supreme Court or with High Court or anything, it can be reported and the committee can take a call and his name can be terminated as a mediator. This is for minor things. Now you ask for a specific fraud. Now if there is a fraud has been committed by a mediator, in the sense that he prepared is settlement, which is fraud could be in different forms. Fraud is just not a word, but an information, because as a mediator, the parties disclose and the party arrive at a settlement. These proceedings are very transparent in nature. Transparent in the nature in the sense that except the confidentiality part of the mediator not disclosing all the facts, once they arrive at a settlement, then things are apparent, things are transparent, things are open. Now, party is signing the document on his own, knowing all facts. Now, after this, the settlement goes to court. There is still a breathing time. There is a breathing time. Party still has an option to go to court and say, okay, sir, this information was disclosed to me wrongly, or this has been wrongly incorporated, or this information was initially not agreed upon. Then you can move an application to the court. The court may say that don't register this settlement. It is at that time only, depending on the gravity of allegation, the court may take a call that whether that mediator, what action should be taken against that mediator. Suppose the allegations are very serious and some facts are disclosed. So mediator is also open to any other criminal offenses. Criminal offense is not against, there is no protection in good faith also. They are not like government servant that you get an protection under good faith. Even a government servant, if he does something not in his professional duty, he is also liable for a regular offense. Even that is there. So those situations are open and that can be dealt with in a criminal offense. It's just like any individual. There can be no protection for it.
Very well said, sir. Next question is from Shubham Sharma, sir. Shubham Sharma.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. My name is Shubham Sharma. I'm a second year law student. I wanted to ask, what role does a lawyer play in the mediation? And how should his conduct be, considering it's a very different setting from a court?
Look, lawyer is very important pillar in a settlement. Very important. Now, remember one thing from all three perspectives. There are three persons. One is mediator, one is A party who represent that lawyer, and one is B, the other party. Now, from all three point of view, the first party, whom the lawyer represents, has got more confidence in his lawyer than anybody else, because initially, when he has got a problem, he goes to a lawyer and reposes faith in him and discloses everything and says, okay, you are good enough to represent my case, so he has got more confidence. Now, before mediation, since in a mediation, the whole process is party-centric, unlike adjudicatory process. In an adjudicatory process, the role is more emphasizing on lawyer. At times, lawyer speaks, at times, not at times, mostly the lawyer speaks, the party doesn't speak. And at times, the lawyer, in his enthusiasm, speaks a little more what is even his case. In a matrimonial case, in some of the parties have got an experience that my allegation is only, I want this relation to be severed, but the allegations is much more made severe by the lawyer, and some allegations to an extra thing has been added to that. So in his enthusiasm. So in a mediation, since it's a party-centric, so lawyer's role is not, mediator do not speak to the lawyers. Mediator interacts more with the party. But at the same time, the lawyer should be always kept in good humor. Lawyer is very useful pillar in two aspects. A, whenever there is a fox pass, when there is an impasse, the lawyer is a neutral person. You can take always is a rational person. He understands the situation more rationally than a party. B situation, if his financial things are secured, his financial payments are secured, what he would have got in a litigation, then definitely he would not mind a settlement. He would not object to any settlement. Otherwise, there are cases where people say that I have not yet come across any case where the lawyer has objected to a settlement, but he can be of great help. So always keep him in good humor, a good conversation. Don't ask his time to be wasted because mediation takes a lot of time. That's one of the things, because one session could be about 2 hours, 3 hours, and at time it takes about 3 to 4 hours. The mediator wants to reach at a settlement, so therefore let's conclude it very fast. So don't ask a lawyer to keep on waiting for such a long time. Ask him to be in his chamber, but be in touch what is happening. Ask your client what is going on, so that in case there is a requirement, he can always be of assistance.
Also, we have a separate session at this point with the role and importance of the lawyers in a mediation with Rajiv sir on 16th.
Yes. Oh, there is a separate session for Rakesh sir.
For Rajiv sir.
Achha, for Rajiv.
Okay. On this
Rajiv will be speaking for the role of lawyers.
Lawyer in mediation.
Oh, great. You have wonderfully organized this summer program.
Thank you, sir.
So last but not the least, Ayushi wants to ask the question. Since there is no statutory process which is to be followed, won't it act as a barrier for mediation process to run smoothly?
Ayushi, this is Arushi.
Yes, Ayushi.
Ayushi.
Yes, sir.
Ayushi, at present, there is no statutory provision for mediation, but it's in the process. It's in the process. And certain barriers which we feel like because of absence of mediation are not barriers as such, because mediation has been recognized under Indian statutes as a mode of resolving a dispute. One is Section 89. Section 89 specifically says that there are mode of arbitration. Then Section 30, Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which says that during the process of mediation, during the process of arbitration, the arbitrator can always resolve the dispute by resorting any dispute, mediation, conciliation, or negotiation. And Section 73, 74 of Arbitration and Conciliation Act are also there, which says of pre-litigation and post-litigation situations. So mediation processing, just like arbitration, there is no statute, but mediation has already been recognized as a mode of resolving the dispute.
Thank you so much, sir. It is indeed a great experience that you have shared with us. Thank you, sir. And thanks to all the students who have shared their enthusiasm and initiative. As we have reached the final session, I would like to invite Mr. Sandeep Singh Ajmani, sir, to conclude the fourth session.
Thank you, Richa, for conducting it so well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, all students.
I have to just propose vote of thanks. So this brings an end to our fourth class, and I'm extremely grateful to Mr. Jitin Mohan Sharma, Senior Advocate and Mediator in Supreme Court, that has great passion for mediation, and it was always a pleasure working under him. And sir keep a separate time for mediation sessions, and we have not seen sir to rush from the mediation, because sir has rightly said that it's a very lengthy process, and sometimes we have to spend much time and we have to compromise with our litigation work. So it brings an end to our fourth class, and fifth class would be taken by Senior Advocate Mr. Rakesh Kumar Khanna on the topic role of negotiating parties in mediation. And the session would be taken at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Then due to the matter which has been come before the Supreme Court tomorrow, so it would be taken at late evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanpreet. Thank you, all students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. Thank you, Rahul.
Pleasure, sir.
Thank you, Richa.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.